Hey guys, Jakob here, and welcome to the new episode of Automated Seller Podcast. We have a new special guest, Corey, a founder of the buffaBRAND. So, hello, Corey. How are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me, Jacob. I really appreciate it. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, thanks a lot. And yes, Corey, it's great to have you here. I know that we just met, so I'm also excited that we both go into the Prosper show that is actually happening very soon. Probably by the time this episode is live, it will be already after Prosper. But let's have a conversation here anyway. I know that you have the booth as well, right? So you will represent the buffaBRAND, which is the Amazon agency, and I would love to talk about it as well. But first, maybe before we go there, could you share a little bit of the introduction with us? Like, what made you even be in the Amazon space? What's your past, and how did you end up actually creating the buffaBRAND?
Yeah, so I'll go backwards a little bit. So I'm Corey Brown. I am the founder and CEO of buffaBRAND Marketing. We are a full service Amazon and beyond agency in Buffalo, New York. That's the buffaBRAND and the Bison above me. I live in Buffalo with my wife and my two sons. I am a huge runner in the community, so I'm a big time runner. I'm actually preparing for my fourth Boston Marathon in a row
Oh, nice.
right now. So we're about a month and a half out from that. Very excited. And yeah, I'm really an organized, self-motivated person who's very relentless in the things that I
And how
pursue.
long are you actually running the buffaBRAND?
Oh, so I've been running buffaBRAND. This is year five
Okay,
of,
got it.
of running buffaBRAND. Yeah. So I founded it 5 years ago. We were really looking to focus on providing quality services for Amazon sellers, mostly in the US market. And I've been working in the Amazon ecosystem for over 10 years
Hmm.
as in various roles as a consultant, in-house as an e-commerce manager at a major brand here in Buffalo, and then also as a private seller. So I'm kind of in all the different
Oh,
branches of
you've
Amazon.
been there all. Yeah, you got it
I've
all.
been
Oh,
through it
that's
all.
awesome. But did you actually start as a seller? I think that's usually the case, or just as a manager.
Yeah, so I actually didn't start as a seller. I actually started as an assistant to a consultant, which
Hmm.
is an interesting way to get into the Amazon world. I was doing e-commerce in some other ways, but never Amazon. And
Okay.
so I started as an assistant to a consultant locally here, and that kind of got everything going for me, where I was like, this is going to be where I'm going to make a living.
That's awesome. That was like 10 years ago, so it was 2014. So Amazon definitely looked completely different than it is today, right?
Very different, very different. It's a whole new world every couple of years here with Amazon. So where we started, most of that's gone way out the window, and we're in a totally different time period now.
Totally. And let's talk about actually, so this path, right? Like you said that you were working as assistant, but what was next? You were actually starting to sell something on Amazon, or how did it work for you?
Yeah, so I was an assistant consultant for a couple of years, and the consultant that I was working directly with, he owned both owned and operated a few different brands, which was a great experience to kind of get in there operationally. But then he also was kind of a coach and mentor for other sellers, which is kind of the more traditional path. You sell first, and then you end up saying, "Hey, I'm pretty good at this selling." People start
Yeah.
asking you questions, and then you end up saying, "I'm answering a lot of questions. I should probably get paid for this. Let's make a business." So that's the route he went. I went a little different route. So I was helping him for a couple of years and really enjoyed that role, learned Shopify, learned a lot about the baseline of the e-commerce systems as a whole. And then moved into an in-house role where I took over a pretty substantial brand here, and we were able to 3x that over 2 years.
Oh wow, that's great.
And yeah, seasonally, to give you a relative scale, seasonally, for about half the year, we were a top 1,000 seller. Not 1%, a
Okay.
top 1,000 seller for
Yeah, yeah.
year after year for about 6 months of the year because it was a seasonal product. But on average, we would end up certainly in the top 1% per
So
year.
what kind of like how they actually measure it? Is it based on revenue or the orders, or how do they measure it?
Yeah, so typically when people are referencing that, they're referencing top line revenue. That's the
Hmm.
easiest. GMV. that's kind of like the benchmark. Now, of course, we'll get into maybe later how much money are you making? What are the profits? All of those types of things. Because people love flashy numbers, right? Flashy numbers definitely get the clicks. But
in the end, what matters is the profit, of course. But actually, I really like this title, like top 1,000 sellers. So what kind of revenue you have to make to be in top 1,000?
So we were doing tens of millions. We'll leave it there.
Okay, got it. Yeah, no, that's enough. So that's awesome actually to hear. And then I'm really curious. Like, at what point did you decide to start selling? And I'll tell you why. It's because I don't have the experience as a seller, right? However, because we are working with so many different cases of crazy sellers, also we are building custom software solutions. So each project is basically different, and there is this reason behind it. Like, there are so many tools in this space, right? Like, you have so many different reprices. You can go to Carbon 6, Jungle Scout, like Helium 10. Each of them, they have their own seller repricer, or they are just overall so many different repricer brands, that like companies that they are building their own reprices. However, still, people decide to go and build their own because they have very unique cases. So on the last especially 2 years, because that was when it got heavy, we've met so many different cases on selling on Amazon, so many different products, I think one of top 3 sellers of the iPhone in the United States, and we're building him like a custom repricer and those kind of cases, that it made me start to sell something, especially that we are based in Poland, where Amazon is still in very early stages. We have different marketplace here called Allegro that took over, and it's very hard for Amazon to actually take over. And so people will start buying here, but still, I'm thinking, hey, we know so much of this juicy knowledge that I may actually start selling something and use all of the technical knowledge that I have to win with the competitors. So
yeah. So I mean, and for us, I am a seller, and I have that knowledge. But when I started buffaBRAND, I was not a seller. And I didn't start as a seller, and I actually didn't have a whole lot of interest in that. And part of that was just I didn't have the capital.
So you actually first started the buffaBRAND and then started selling?
Yes, actually.
Oh wow,
so
that's the first time I have someone who's running the agency that started selling after running the agency.
It's the opposite side. So the thing about what I was doing is I was so in the thick of operations at the local company here, the large seller, that and I ended up getting promoted and ended up managing a whole floor of people and have all this going on. I mean, we were running at that point 5 Amazon stores, 3 Walmart stores, 3 eBay stores, and 7 independent websites. Now, I wasn't 100% in charge of all of those things, but I was certainly in the room making the decisions and helping with that, and leading the channel side of that. So when you get to do that for a couple of years, that's very intense, because when you're a seller, and they were a seller fulfilled prime seller, meaning their warehouse had to meet all the standards of what Amazon does in their warehouses. It's a very intense job. Also, just on a personal note, that was when we had our first child. So I was not sleeping. I was dealing with headaches and putting out fires all the time. So when I left there, I didn't want to be a seller for a little while. But I had all the knowledge to go ahead and help other sellers that would then do a lot of the operations. I wanted to be more in charge of the marketing and get them set up and get them operating correctly. But I didn't want to have to put out fires in the middle of the night, because I'm at the point where I'm focusing on my family and we had young kids at that point. And then later on is where I began getting partnered in as a seller, because I had clients who were thinking, well, he has all the skills. I like working with this person. And so that's how I actually became a private seller, was partnering in with current clients who wanted to have a little more unique stake in things and kind of set that up that way. So that's actually how I became a seller, which is probably a lot different than many people that you'll talk to who went straight into selling and then kind of figured out maybe I'll be a consultant.
Exactly. No, that's very interesting story. I would say. Like I don't think I had that here, so it's awesome to hear it. Actually, that it's actually possible to do it also in this way, and also when it comes to having the child. I recently read this tweet. I like by very popular founder here that if you are single and you're saying but pretty much that if you don't have a children, right, you don't have a privilege to say that you are busy while you are being you don't have a children, right? So you're just alone. So yeah, exactly. I can see that. But yes, Corey, I would love to also hear what you are selling then. Like what are those are probably brands, right? Or is it like arbitrage selling or something?
Yeah, so we do have I have a couple, I've staken in a couple different private label brands, one of which is in the music education space, selling, notebooks and selling music posters, and it's all in that category, in that vertical. It's shifted over time. So we've got that going on, and then also I am selling something that is probably not cool to most people, but I think it's kind of cool, and that would be like switch plate covers. So if you have your switch or your plug in any office in any home, you have a plate that covers it. We sell those.
Yeah.
We sell really unique versions of those. From ceramic to metal and all different types. And yeah, it's not the sexiest industry. I'll say that it's not, but it is pretty awesome. And it also was founded by a really cool person here in Buffalo. And that person was looking to retire. And so basically I was able to partner in and have one of my current clients buy one of, this client's business and kind of put it into a safe spot for the future. And so that was a really cool moment for me to be able to kind of carry on a tradition for what I consider to be a legacy Buffalo-based brand. As you can tell, I'm very into my city, so I'm very proud of that. But this brand's been around for decades, and I wanted it to live on past this ownership group. So that was pretty cool.
No, that's actually a crazy story, and I would love to also ask you a little bit about this entrepreneurship and your mind. So I mean, you said that you first were working in the space, but that was like a typical like full-time job, right? And at some point you decided to actually start the buffaBRAND. So you probably had some switch in your mind also that you want to start something on your own. And I'm really curious, what were you basically, what are your thought process back then, and why did you decide to actually start doing this?
Okay, so I think that's a really interesting path and a very good question, because for me, it starts foundationally with my brain. So the way that I think is a little different than a lot of people. I've come to realize, I'm in my mid-30s now. I understand that I'm not all things to all people. So for me, I don't see the world how it is. I see every room, every situation as how it could be in its most idealistic fashion. So that for me was something that I had to kind of put to the side in my early years of working. When you're just kind of a piece of a puzzle, you don't get to have the big say in the room. And so for me, the entrepreneurial side came from realizing that I was kind of almost fighting with the people that I worked with over and over and over again, the bosses, because I wanted to make everything so much better. And a lot of times, for whatever reasons, it could just be, they're at a different point or they don't have the budget, but a lot of bosses are like, yeah, just do your job. And I'm like, yeah, but we could do it so much better if we do it this way. And so I'm always thinking that my brain only works that one way. And what I found over time is working with a mentor, he kept insisting, he's like, you're really great at Amazon. Go start a business. And I came from a family where people didn't own businesses around us. So that wasn't for me. I was supposed to work for someone else. Yeah. So I was very risk averse. And for me, I took a big push from my mentor, and it took COVID hitting. And honestly, it took having my second child and COVID hitting and all of these things happening at once, and I finally was like, I just have to do this, and I did.
Wow, yeah.
So for me, I was very reluctant.
Yeah, but actually, starting the Amazon business also like during COVID, I think this is like that was a good decision, right? Because
It's
I
the
think
best
that
decision.
Amazon exploded during COVID, so I think that was also awesome. But like definitely having children, I think that was quite a risk, right? Because starting on something on your own, especially in the beginning, is actually the other way around. Like it's very hard to make a good back, right? Like, and you need to put so much effort to actually do that. So I'm actually curious, how did you start working and having like a first clients? Where did you get them from?
That's a great question, and not everyone's going to be familiar with where I started, but we actually started getting clients. And back then, it was just myself and a couple people working part time. I started on Jungle Market. I don't know if you know
Jungle
about
Market. I don't
Yeah,
know this. Yeah.
Jungle Market used to be a platform that was owned by Jungle Scout, which you'll be more familiar with. Obviously,
Okay.
everyone knows Jungle Scout,
Yeah.
right? So Jungle Scout used to own Jungle Market, and what it was a marketplace specifically for Amazon service providers, agencies, freelancers, kind of a blend. And basically, you could put up your what you offered, and then Amazon sellers would go there. And since Jungle Scout was the one who owned it, it was very trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And basically kind of had the methodology of like you hire people, you both have to leave a review at the end, so the good people kind of rise to the top and the not so great players kind of sink. And
Was like a job market like Upwork for them, but just around Amazon. Okay.
exactly. It was just based around Amazon and channel sales in general. And I got on there and I worked my butt off and just kept working with clients day and night. I would take calls at any hour. I would do anything that needed to get done at any time. And just hustled as much as I possibly could for probably well over a year. And I became one of the top 3 people on Jungle Market
Oh,
within
wow.
3 months. And then Jungle Market announced they were going to shut down. And I thought, my business is dead. I'm, like my whole business, everything comes in through Jungle Market. I'm like, how do I
Wow.
sustain this?
Yeah.
So we were able to sustain it because most of our clients that we worked with continued and followed us off platform.
Okay. But did they have it like in their agreement that you actually cannot work with your clients outside of their platform? Because just to give you the example, right? Like I've started on Upwork and we were working with some clients there, but we never took anyone outside of the Upwork, and we also never had like this kind of relationship that like those are usually like quick gigs, but still I just remember that in the agreement you had to I think work 3 years on Upwork because they were taking fee of each job, right? And if you were taking them from outside of the Upwork, and if they would find out, they would first of all delete, like ban you completely, and I think they would even like sue you or something. So I'm actually curious if they had anything like that, or they were like pretty open, like yeah, just this is like more like a search engine that you can find people to work with, but we don't care. Or how did it work?
It wasn't as tight as that. There were some implications of like you should try to use people, like try to go through the platform. But there was also the ability to say like, okay, just if you, basically their rule was if you start a project on this platform, you finish it on this platform. If you start another project off platform, that's fine. So especially at the end when they announced that they were going to deprecate, they're like, hey, we're going to sunset this in 2 months, I think is the notice that they gave us, which was very scary.
Oh, wow, yeah.
They basically said, go to Upwork, go to Freelancer, go to these other places, and you can take anyone you want off platform because we know that like we're leaving you and we're done in 2 months and like that's it. End of story. So we were able to transition a lot of clients over at that time. That's really the window that we used once it was very much they were encouraging us to do so.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, yes, I definitely like. So this is how you get your first clients outside of this, right? Like you basically converted them so they will work directly with you. But I think the biggest like kind of scarcity that you had was that you built all of the SEO directly for this platform, right? Like you built your brand on this platform. You said that you were like in the top 3. So I assume that was the huge pain, right? Because That's the biggest issues with those platforms, that if you use them just to run your business, that if you're out or for some reason your account is banned or something, everything you build up there, it's gone, right? So for us right now, that when we are working on our business, I mean, we are working on multiple different channels so people can find us, right? Like we cannot just rely on one source of leads, basically. Even though we have one source of leads that generates, like, I think around 70% of the business overall, but still those 30%, we are still there. So
And it's kind of like talking about selling on Amazon. Like when you sell only on Amazon and they shut you down, what happens? You're like, oh no, 90% of my revenue is now gone. How do I do this? I luckily had the foresight to also build a Shopify site where I had duplicated all of the things that they could order on this jungle market. I had built a Shopify site so that anyone could then find us on the internet and order the exact same products there. And so when Jungle Market was shut down, then I was able to immediately have them transition because they were used to that buying process. So I replicated that buying process on a private website and was able to get enough to sustain us. But yeah, it was definitely a moment where I was like, oh no, I'm out of business. Like I'm done. And of course that's not true. Here we are years later. It's been great, but yeah, that was kind of my first moment where I'm like, oh no, I think I did the wrong thing.
Totally. But I see it. I mean, I think what really made me quit the Upwork was that, because I mean, yeah, one thing is like there's a huge competition and so on, but like everywhere, right? So I was like, okay, if I do it properly, I'm sure I can build up the agency on Upwork. But I remember this one job that for some reason it didn't click. Like it didn't click at all. Like the initial requirements were different than then later on the requirements during the project. That the client also didn't have the budget. They wanted everything immediately that we didn't agree on. And then I remember that they paid us like the initial budget for this whole project. Then after a few days, I delivered them like the first few things, and then all of the complications, they actually started to happen. And then I just realized, okay, there's no way that I will do that. Like there's no way. So what I did is I gave them the money. I said, you don't have to pay anything for the work I did. I just don't want to fuck up my profile, pretty much, because I knew that if I got like 1 star or something, I'm done. Like it's so hard initially. Like if you get like 3 reviews and then the 4th is like 1 star, that's it. Like no one wants to work with you because the average is like less than 4 stars, right? So no one wants to do that. So then I realized, okay. Then I gave them the money and so on. They said, okay, yes, we won't give you the bad review. Like I said, I will also not do anything to destroy your profile, right? Because like we both want the best and we were fine. But the problem was that Upwork itself, because we didn't give each other any review, it assumed that the work was like not completed, and it automatically gave us some rating, and this just destroyed the profile. And I was like, okay, like it didn't work like the 1 star, but it pretty much just affected the profile. So I was like, okay, if we have it initially here, that's no way, like we shouldn't just do it here. So I said, okay, I need to find the other way of getting the clients. And now again, we've built the actual brand that is recognizable in the Amazon space, and that's actually pretty cool. So
yeah,
I can feel you.
Upwork can be tough. We don't use Upwork a whole ton, truth be told, for some of those reasons. I also feel like a lot of these working apps, all the big names and some of the little ones, they don't garner real reviews because of what you just stated. Anytime something bad happens, what happens? The agency or the freelancer eats the cost, eats the work, and says, please don't write a scathing review about me and ruin my ability to earn income. And the reality is, your discrepancies in that situation you described, that happens all the time. And sometimes it is the agency's fault. Sometimes it's the client's fault. And it's very clear. But neither party is willing to actually say, hey, this agency stinks. I don't want to work with them anymore. And you're not willing to say like, oh, this client stinks. So neither party gives a real review. And then what happens is you both move on, and whoever the problem was just creates that problem again for the next agency or for the next
Yeah.
client. And so we see that in the space all the time where people come to us and they'll be like, all this stuff happened. We've got all this baggage going on. And we're like, ooh, like, was the agency the problem or was the client the problem? We have to figure that out ourselves and figure out, do we want to work with this client based on this information? But yeah, that does put you in quite the spot.
Oh yeah, totally. But yeah, this is something that actually just opened my mind, right? Because we have a lot of clients who came to us because they said that the previous service provider pretty much failed, but we never even thought about that. Hey, there might be something actually that you are not the right person to work with, right? Fortunately, we never had this situation, but I've never even thought about it, right? Like I always think, okay, new client, this is like my new boss, right?
Fresh
Like I will
start,
do
yeah.
everything. So,
No,
but yeah,
I mean,
that's something really good to keep in mind, actually.
yeah, we recently had, just as a super quick example to tie this off, like we recently had a client come to us and say, "Hey, I've fired 8 other agencies that have done this service." And so for me, my immediate
That's
conversation,
a red flag.
yeah. So I'm like, well, then they probably weren't all the problem, right? Like if you said 2 agencies, I might be like, well, maybe they both were not so great. But when you say I've fired more than 5 people doing this task, well, then there's just a misalignment of what your expectations are versus what's out there. Because I can guarantee you, if you ran through 8 other agencies, somebody's good at their job. So
Totally.
it's
Yeah,
probably you, and you probably need to look in the mirror. So
totally.
but it's all about fit and alignment when it comes to service.
I can only agree. And Corey, I would love to actually ask you now, because I will give you the example of what I'm trying to where I'm trying to head with this conversation.
Sure.
You mentioned that it will be before we started, right? Like the recording, you said that it will be your first prospect show, right?
Yes.
Do you actually go to any other fair conventions, conferences like around the Amazon space?
Yeah, we just started doing conferences. Quite honestly,
Okay.
this entire buffaBRAND was bootstrapped. I put $1,000 in a bank account and started this thing. So I didn't have the money to just go
Yeah.
out and say, hey, let's do all these major conferences in Europe. So we really did start from the very bottom 5 years ago and work our way up, by having quality and creating genuine connections. So when it comes to conferences, we're pretty new to it. Even though we've been
Okay.
in the space 5 years, we have only done 3 or 4 conferences at this point.
Okay,
Over the
but
last
basically
year.
you have the experience, and I'm actually really curious what will be your takeaway here, because what I've noticed, especially on those very popular conferences, like the one, for example, organized, I mean, Prosper is one of them that what I realized in the comments, especially, I mean, in our case, this is great because we work with all of these service providers. So we don't care if it's a seller, if it's agency, or it's like a it's like product SaaS company. All of them, they could potentially work with us. But what I've realized, especially in the agency where like everyone says that there's less and less sellers attending the conferences, more and more agency and other service providers that want to sell their services, right? So like what I'm trying to say, like overall, that the competition is bigger. I would say the market is maybe more like getting saturated when it comes to like service providers. So what it means is it's harder to run the Amazon agency, and you're doing this. It's actually quite successful, like because like you said, it's been 5 years. You're just scaling. I would love to ask you right now, because of this market that it's getting harder and harder to get new clients. What's your client acquisition strategy right now? Right? Did you actually manage maybe through the conferences to get those clients, maybe through other channels? I mean, we just discussed that how you started because of this Jungle. What was the name? Jungle Market platform, right? But like, how is it for you right now, actually, to get new clients to work with?
Yeah, I think there's a few questions in there. I'll kind of hit them in the order I remember them. But for new clients right now, I mean, we're on the Amazon Seller Central Partner Network, which is
Does it work? Does it work for you, actually?
So yes and no.
Okay.
It's not a great platform.
Yeah.
And honestly, we've been working with Walmart to help them build their platform even better. So we're working in both camps to help them both create better service provider dashboards because we want to be able to connect to people and it's difficult. So we do get some work through there. We do have people find and kind of validate us through there. Most of the work that we get right now is still through client referrals. It is still returning work. And now we've added in conferences over the last year. So for the first 3 years, we did not spend $1 on marketing. Not one single dollar was spent on marketing ourselves. It was all client referrals and connections and continuing. So like for us, our average retention for a client is over 2 years, which is a long time. Most agencies, it's like 3 months.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's a lot of the stats that I've seen recently. It's like 3 to 6 months, and you churn those people over. We tend to keep people for 2.5 years, and so that means every lead, every client that we start to work with, we have a much longer time to work with them, and so we don't have to go out and search for as much.
Yeah.
And by the time we're done at that 2-year cycle, they probably have referred some others to us as well. So that's been an interesting piece of it.
Yeah, I really like it. Like it's the same way with us actually. We still work with the clients that when I started as a freelancer and I got some of the clients, we still work till now with those clients. I actually recently even dropped one client review, like with literally one of our first clients, and it's been 4 years of a journey, and very funny on this short, like it's like 10-minute interview. We just said, just to be straight and honest with everyone, hey, how it's been working for those last 4 years, and we both said, hey, it's been ups and downs, right? But we managed to go through, and that's also something that I think it's good to mention in such a thing, because obviously during this 4-year period there will be some situations that you have to overcome. It's not always the perfect case scenario, so. I think it's really great that you have clients that you can work with and build relationships. It's not like a quick gigs and like a huge rotation, because I don't know, for me, I don't like this kind of jobs basically.
Yeah. So for me, kind of going to part of the secondary part of the question from before, like when it comes to the saturation of the market, and there's fewer sellers and more service providers, I actually think that's okay. We haven't really felt that too much. And one of the reasons is like, so at my company, I am all about, and I probably say this to the point that my team is probably annoyed by it, but I say it's people, projects, profit, in that order. It's always people, projects, profit. And if you do it in any other order, you will not succeed. Because truly, what you just said, the ups and the downs. Yes, we have clients that I've had since the second month I started this. Back when it was just me in this room and a hope and a prayer, and they've been with us this whole time. We rode the ups of COVID and we had huge scaling. We've had some downsizing since then, and we've kind of stabilized to what those new numbers are. And if you don't have that trust and that connection with the people, then you're never going to see the projects and the profits happen. And so we always just keep that top of mind when it comes down to it. Keeping that as our mantra and making sure that we do that has served us very, very well.
That's great. And this kind of starts the answer for my next question, which would be, how do you stand out from the other agencies?
Well, if we're at a conference, I'm 6'3" and I have tattoos all over, so it's pretty easy to find me. But if you're talking on the digital landscape, we definitely have we have our own branding. I mean, we have our own vision of how we work. So when you see us versus other agencies, I don't know I'm sure you've been on a bunch of different agencies' websites. Sometimes it's hard to tell what the heck people do. You look at their website and they just have like a few examples and all these like really loose terminologies, like they're trying to be Apple. We're a little more straightforward than that. If you look at us,
I actually noticed. Yeah, I went to your website before our podcast, and I actually said, yeah, that's pretty straightforward actually.
And when you see us at Prosper, you're gonna immediately from across the room be like, those are the buffaBRAND people. Like there'll be no question. You'll see the yellow, you'll see the black. We've got all hand drawn from our in-house designers.
Nice.
We've all got our avatars and we've got all these icons, and like we have our own feel. And so that's one of the ways that we stand out. Now, obviously that's a little superficial, really. That's just how people see us. So maybe that's what gives us a little bit of attention, starts those conversations. I think the secondary which is really the most important thing here. Is once you get to that next level, it's like, okay, is there substance there? And for us, I'm really huge on being highly communicative and over communicating with projects. I started as like more of a project manager. So for me, organization and communication are like, you have to have them. They're paramount to what we're doing. And I truly believe, I've been in some other agencies, project management or lack thereof. I believe that we do that better than 90% of people out there. I know there's some people who are amazing, who will probably show me some things that blow my mind, and I'm never too proud to say, like that. We may not be the best, but we are up in that, and we are very good at a lot of things. But that's really in that top tier, and our clients feel that when they come into our ecosystem. And I know we're going to talk software here in a minute, so we'll get into that. When they come into that, they see that we've put thought into every aspect of their customer journey to reduce friction. And they know that we're going to do that for their customers and potential customers. And I think it just internalizes this trust of they really are on it at all times. So those are some of the big ways that we really kind of stand out in the space.
Got it. And now, yes, actually, that you started, that yes, this question will be about the software. So pretty much, speaking of being different and speaking of doing ways, so now on the delivery side, but maybe also on your internal operations side of running the company, I would love to hear what's like your software stack inside the company. So like first to do everything inside your company, so communicate with your team members, manage them, but then also on the delivery side to work with your clients. I'm really curious also, like there are great tools out there. Maybe perhaps you're using some of your internal own software, or you want to build something. Like I would love to also have this kind of conversation. Or have you ever, I mean, this is the next question, so let's maybe first start with what are you using currently?
Yeah, so let's start there. So everything in our business is built on a hub of using Basecamp. So we use Basecamp project management. I am a huge fan of everything that Basecamp 37 Signals does. The way that they work, I read their books. I've gifted their books to my team.
Oh, I know because when I first heard it, I didn't know what company is it, but now when I just Googled them, I know them because of their branding. It's like very unique.
Yes, so. and it changed. Yeah, they updated their branding a few years back, and I've been with them. I actually implemented Basecamp at that in-house position that I had originally because they were using email for 100-person business, which is a nightmare. And I was like, no.
Wow.
So I didn't quite get the buy-in there that I would have loved to have had, but we did streamline a lot. So when I got to take over and start my own business, I was all in on making sure that everything is as streamlined as possible. Now, Basecamp's pretty simple. There's not a lot there's more you can plug into it now than you used to be able to. But I like it because it's purposely simplistic, because clients get confused and so do team members. And so when you can have really accountable conversations, whether it's a task that they need to get done or it's something that we're thinking about doing, it's internal or it's with the client, having different ways to be able to attack those projects and stay accountable as your team scales is the single most important thing. If you can't do that as an agency, you will fail. Because you have how many bosses, It depends on how big of an agency you are. But the bigger you are, the more bosses you have in a way. So you have to be able to keep every single one of them in a really organized fashion. So that's one of the things that my team and I
So this is again for the project management software. So
yes, it's really our hub for everything. That's where we start. That's where everything starts and finishes. And then I'll run through just like quick stack. So we use Shopify for our website because we're Shopify developers as well. So I was like,
that's awesome.
Let's actually do the thing that we believe in. We use Zapier a lot to connect a lot of these other apps because I'm not a software developer. So we use Zoom, Calendly, Google Drive, obviously huge ability to use that. We use Helium 10, Smart Scout.
So now you are talking about the actual management of your, not management, but
overall.
Delivery for your client. Okay.
Yeah. So we use just a whole bunch. We have QuickBooks. One of the big ones that this year we've switched over to, so we're using Merchant Spring for the first time for reporting and some of these other things. We still work with Seller Labs as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say one of the smallest and most worthwhile ones that we've got was PandaDoc. I got PandaDoc this year for our
Okay.
software for contracts because contracts
Panda
was
Duck, I think. Yeah, I'm just
it's
googling it.
DocuSign, PandaDoc,
Yeah, yeah.
having something along those lines. What a game changer! I avoided the cost of that for years, and
Yeah.
I know we're going to get to a part where you're going to ask me a question about like what would you do differently. PandaDoc would be one of them because contracts are super important.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, so that's kind of our overall stack for the most part. We've got a few other tools that we use, but I would say like 90% of what we do happens in Basecamp.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty modern stack. So yeah, the one was the questions that I really wanted to ask you because I can see basically that nowadays, like first of all, I mean it's impossible to run a business, no matter if it's like as you said, like it could be Basecamp, could be Monday.com, could be ClickUp, as we are using big fans. We are big fans of ClickUps, but pretty much there is always different kind of categories of tools that you need to use, no matter what in the end is the decision that you pick to do those for the company that you want to, like Basecamp or like again Monday.com, but like you need those tools to run your business. And this also, like, I think shows that you need to invest in your company, because those are also the worst kind of investments that you want to do, especially when you have a big team and there's like those monthly subscriptions that you need to buy the next seat. Like we
Swipe
use
the card.
Slack. Yeah, we use Slack, and initially we were actually not using Slack. We are using like the substitute for Slack because like we just hated to pay for each seat. Fortunately, now we got more enterprise. We need to have Slack because our clients love Slack, right? But like it adds up so easily, right? To like few thousands in the end of the month, right? So it really takes some, I would say, investment to run the agency on daily basis.
Absolutely. Investing in software and kind of knowing your cost, cost per head, if you will, for your software. So I do a yearly review of all of our software to see what are we underutilizing, not utilizing at all, not using at all. Do we have too many seats over here? Do we have not enough over here? So like if I can cut one seat off of a license and then I can buy something like PandaDoc and make someone's job way easier, then I'm going to do that. But yeah, Slack's actually funny you use that as an example because Slack is one that everyone keeps telling you gotta have, and Basecamp does the messaging, and it doesn't do messaging the way Slack does. It doesn't do it as well. But for Basecamp, I don't pay per person in my project management. So whether it's clients or employees, no matter what I scale to, and I think they've changed their pricing a little bit recently, but that per seat model is killer because it's like you start to scale as soon as you add somebody.
Monthly and per seat.
It's rough. So I try to keep everything, as low as possible in that regard, and then use tools that won't cost me on a per license basis.
Got it. And the next question is, and of course I have to ask it because this is our business model, have you ever thought about building any tool on your own actually? So instead of actually paying monthly, and especially when you are running an agency, like I know almost all of the tools that are being used by agencies, and especially the PPC tools, they can be very costly, especially when they are taking the percentage of the ad spend, right? So I'm actually curious, have you ever thought about building your own tech, or have you started doing that? Or
So as I mentioned earlier, we're a very bootstrapped business. So I know that I am not a software developer. I do not have a software developer on my team. It wouldn't be the most pertinent hire for what we do best in our core competencies. So have I thought about softwares? Yes, let's refer back to the question of I see things how they could be. Of course, I've thought of 1,000 softwares so what I don't use any custom software at this point because of those obvious reasons. I have a number of items I would love to develop, but I think they're very cost prohibitive. And honestly, at this point, they're also time prohibitive for me. I'm a person who loves to say yes. I love to build things. But I'm also at a point where, like I said, I own a couple different businesses. My wife owns a business. I marathon. I have 2 young kids. And it's eventually you have to start saying no to things before, so you can say yes to the things that matter. So software has been put on the back burner for me. But what I will say is I think SaaS and the SaaS model in some fashion that is in my future. I don't know what capacity, but I do believe that in some way that I'll end up in the SaaS world, whether it's helping develop or sell or something in between.
That's awesome, and I think that there's even this saying that every company will become a technological company at some point. So if you can actually solve some problems by building some tech, that's the way to go. So if you have already those ideas, it's pretty much a matter of time that you'll find some more free time. Maybe you'll hire someone who can actually get your tasks, and you have more free time to actually think about it. And then, of course, the financial decision of the investment. But I think it's pretty much a matter of time. And almost every entrepreneurial journey of starting the company, at some point, a company is mature enough to think about some tech that they will build on their own. So especially nowadays, that it's compared to what it like nowadays, software development is really very easy compared to what it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Like, not even going to like very deep low level coding, but like you have so much of like no code tools, low code tools, platforms that you can actually do things much faster. There's an AI that can help build also software much faster. So many frameworks. So overall, to launch the MVP and validate your idea, it's just so quick nowadays. So this is something that I can just add from myself, that it will happen much faster than you think. So if you're already having those conversations with yourself.
I've got a bunch of ideas just in this space alone. But yeah, I definitely see it in my future. So maybe we'll have a conversation about that again in the future.
Definitely.
We'll further that for sure.
That's for sure. And yes, Corey, I know that we are almost running out of time. It's actually a very nice conversation here, but I would love to ask you then about this last question that you already started to mention about. So you already have all of this experience. I'm in the e-com space 10 years, but now for the agency side, 5 years. If you would actually start right now from scratch to build your Amazon agency business, what would you different? Or even like the follow-up question would be, what advice would you give to someone that is starting the Amazon agency at the moment?
Interesting. Yeah. So for me personally, since that's the easiest lens to look at, the first thing I would say is funding. That's
okay.
I would have taken on either a silent partner or taken a significant business loan or found some form of funding to jumpstart my business much faster. Now that I know at that point in time the risk reward ratio was not where I wanted it to be, especially with a young family. And now that I know that this is a successful model and it's something that I can sustain and doing great work for clients, if I could go back in time, I would have just found money some way, shape, or form and just gone to all the conferences and done exactly what I said I didn't do, and really jumped into it, because we would have a really, really large business that would be impacting even more clients at this point. A couple other small things would be, I mentioned PandaDoc, so that would be one of those silly ones. I would further have automated my onboarding process for my clients, because I was actually at a client suggestion like 6 to 8 months in that was like, you really should automate this, that I started to build out those automated processes, which really launched my project. And then the only other couple little things would be I would have charged more right out of the gate instead of doing things for almost free. Which I think
we all did that.
I think every person who starts their business would say, I should have made more money in the first year. And the last one would be, I actually would have gotten a space earlier. We stayed fully remote for a long while, and I had employees that were out of state, and I had some great employees that were out of state actually, and they were fantastic for the business. But if I could go back in time, I would have hired in Buffalo and gotten a small co-working type space almost immediately, so that we could have gotten in a room and collaborated 3-4 days a week. That's what we do now. We're in the office 3 days a week. We're at home 2 days a week. And I think that is better than remote work, quite honestly. And I'm 100%. A huge remote work advocate. I was pushing for it. And then after COVID, I started to realize it's a balancing act. So that would be something I would, if I could go back in time, I think that could have also launched my business faster, further. So yeah.
That's awesome to hear actually also, because I mean I'm a big fan of office work. I used to be a big fan of remote work, workation, digital nomad stuff, and
Yeah.
so on. Yeah, but actually I think it also clicked for me after the COVID, that I've been staying so much at home that I just couldn't do that anymore. And yes, we now we are actually a second office. We just moved in like 2 months ago, and it's a game changer for us. But we do more like a hybrid work. So as you also said, 3 days in the office, 2 days, or sometimes like people here are 5 days in the office, right? But like
Yep.
just the general idea is to be hybrid, and if you want to have more focus, yes, focus at work, but if you want to brainstorm something, ask questions, it's much better to be in the environment working with people in one building. Like I just know it, and it completely changed our business once we actually had our first office. So I can only agree here.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. The collaboration, the personal connections are just different. It's just you learn.
Team building, basically.
Yeah, you learn about people through conversations that just wouldn't happen in a Zoom environment where
Yeah.
you get on a call, you solve a problem, you get off the call, and you're back to like it's you and your dog, and you're fixing the problem. At the office, you take that extra 3 minutes, you have a couple sips of coffee, you check in to see how they're feeling about what happened and all of a sudden that team just really meshes. And for me, that was a real moment to kind of go, okay, this is the exact right balance. Like if you have kids, you could stay home. If you have to do something, stay home. It's all flexible, but let's get together. Let's bring this community together. And
Totally.
I think that'll be cool. Like you said, this is going to probably air after Prosper, but I think that's part of like going to conferences too, is like that on a greater scale. Like we all talk like this, but it's gonna be great to be able to shake your hand and actually have a
Totally.
nice conversation in person. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Corey, awesome. Thanks a lot. That was really nice episode. Thanks a lot for conversation. I will just have like a last one question to you overall, like also for everyone who is listening. Where could people find you and buffaBRAND?
Okay, so I am notoriously an introverted hermit, so I do not do any social media at all. You could find me on LinkedIn a little bit, but mostly if you wanted to have a conversation with me, you could hit us up at buffaBRAND.com and check us out from there, set up an intro call, or even just shoot me an email right off of there.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. And yes, thanks a lot for everyone who is listening. Corey, it was a pleasure.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.